When you were little, did your parents tell you bedtime stories? Fairy tales to help you fall asleep. Stories where the handsome prince kills the monster. When you grow up, you convinced yourself that fairy tales are fake. Monsters aren't real. When you listen to a creepypasta, you don't really believe that the stories are real. Do you?
3 Snake Leaves. An old fairy tale. There was once upon a time a poor man who could no longer support his only son. Then said the son, "Dear father, things go so badly with us that I am a burden to you. I would rather go away and see how I can earn my bread." So the father gave him his blessing, and with great sorrow took leave of him. At this time the king of a mighty empire was at war, and the youth took service with him, and went out to fight. Then, when he came before the enemy, there was a battle, and great danger, and it rained shots, until his comrades fell on all sides. And when the leader also was killed, those left were about to take flight, but the youth stepped forth, spoke boldly to them, and cried, "We will not let our fatherland be ruined." Then the others followed him, and he pressed on and conquered the enemy. When the king heard that he owed the victory to him alone, he raised him above all others, gave him great treasures, and made him the first in the kingdom. The king had a daughter who was very beautiful, but she was also very strange. She had made a vow to take no one as her lord and husband who did not promise to let himself be buried alive with her if she died first. "If he loves me with all his heart," said she, "of what use will life be to him afterwards?" On her side, she gave that she would do the same if he died first, would go down to the grave with him. This strange oath had up to this time frightened away all wooers, but the youth became so charmed with her beauty that he cared for nothing, but asked her father for her. "But do you know what you must promise?" said the king. "I must be buried with her," he replied, "if I outlive her, but my love is so great that I do not mind the danger." Then the king consented, and the wedding was solemnized with great splendor. They lived now for a while, happy and contented with each other. And then it befell that the young queen was attacked by a severe illness, and no physician could save her. And as she lay there dead, the young king remembered what he had been obliged to promise, and was horrified at having to lie down alive in the grave. But there was no escape. The king had placed sentries at all the gates, and it was not possible to avoid his fate. As the day came when the corpse was to be buried, he was taken down with it into the royal vault, and then the door was shut and bolted. Near the coffin stood a table on which were 4 candles, 4 loaves of bread, and 4 bottles of wine. And when this provision came to an end, he would have to die of hunger. And now he sat there full of pain and grief, ate every day only a little piece of bread, drank only a mouthful of wine, and nevertheless saw death daily drawing nearer. While he thus gazed before him, he saw a snake creep out of a corner of the vault and approach the dead body. And as he thought it came to gnaw at it, he drew his sword and said, "As long as I live, you shall not touch her," and hewn the snake in 3 pieces. After a time, a second snake creeped out of a hole and when it saw the other lying dead and cut in pieces, it went back, but soon came again with 3 green leaves in its mouth. Then it took the 3 pieces of the snake, laid them together as they fitted, and placed one of the leaves on each wound. Immediately the severed parts joined themselves together. The snake moved and became alive again. Both of them hastened away together. The leaves were left lying on the ground, and a desire came into the mind of the unhappy man who had been watching all of this, to know if the wondrous power of the leaves, which brought the snake to life again, could not likewise be of service to a human being. So he picked up the leaves and laid one of them on the mouth of his dead wife, and the other 2 on her eyes. And hardly had he done this, then the blood stirred in her veins, rose in her pale face, and colored it again. Then she drew breath, opened her eyes, and said, "Oh, God, where am I?" "You are with me, dear wife," he answered, and he told her how everything had happened, and how he had brought her back to life again. Then he gave her some wine and bread, and when she had regained her strength, he raised her up, and they went to the door and knocked, and called so loudly that the sentries heard and told the king. The king came down himself and opened the door, and there he found both strong and well, and rejoiced with them, that now all sorrow was over. The young king, however, took the 3 snake leaves with him, gave them to a servant, and said, "Keep them for me carefully, and carry them constantly about you. Who knows in what trouble they may yet be of service to us?" But a change had taken place in his wife. After she had been restored to life, it seemed as if all love for her husband had gone out of her heart. After some time, when he wanted to make a voyage overseas to visit his old father, and they had gone on board ship, she forgot the great love and fidelity which he had shown her, and which had been the means of rescuing her from death, and conceived a wicked inclination for the skipper. And once, when the young king lay there asleep, she called in the skipper, and seized the sleeper by the head, and the skipper took him by the feet, and thus they threw him down into the sea. When the shameful deed was done, she said, "Now let us return home, and say that he died on the way. I will extol and praise you to my father, that he will marry me to you, and make you the heir to his crown." But the faithful servant, who had seen all that they did, unseen by them, unfastened a little boat from the ship, got into it, sailed after his master, and let the traders go on their way. He fished up the dead body, and by the help of the 3 snake leaves which he carried about with him, he lay on the eyes and mouth. He fortunately brought the young king back to life. They both rowed with all their strength day and night, and their little boat sailed so swiftly that they reached the old king before the others. He was astonished when he saw them come alone, and asked what had happened to them. When he learned the wickedness of his daughter, he said, "I cannot believe that she behaved so ill." But the truth will soon come to light, and bade both go into a secret chamber and keep themselves hidden from everyone. Soon afterwards the great ship came sailing in, and a godless woman appeared before her father with a troubled countenance. He said, "Why do you come back alone? Where is your husband?" "Oh, dear father," she replied, "I come home again in great grief. During the voyage, my husband became suddenly ill and died, and if the good skipper had not given me his help, it would have gone ill with me. He was present at his death and can tell you all." The king said, "I will make the dead alive again," and opened the chamber and bade the two come out. When the woman saw her husband, she was thunderstruck and fell on her knees and begged for mercy. The king said, "There is no mercy. He was ready to die with you and restore you to life again, but you have murdered him in his sleep and shall receive the reward you deserve." Then she was placed with her accomplice in a ship which had been pierced with holes and sent out to sea, where they soon sank amid the waves. This one doesn't leave at the happy ever after.
Be careful what you wish for. Many old legends and fairy tales are based in some truth, but which part of the fairy tale is true?
The Dullahan is a creature in Irish myth, well, culture. We know better than to call it a myth around here. It wears long, black, flowing robes and rides a horse that spits fire. Upon its shoulder there is no head, for it carries it in its hands, and it has a whip made of human spines. Though this certainly is scary, what I find most terrifying is the fact that this creature can kill you simply by uttering your name whistled it is nearby. Of course, there is really no way to protect yourself against this fairy except gold. The creature is deathly afraid of the stuff, which is why whenever me or my siblings go out at night, we are specifically instructed to wear a golden necklace around our necks in order to keep us safe. Well, I've been replacing my little brother's necklace with craftily made iron. Gosh, I hope the Dullahan takes him soon.
Gold, iron, silver, precious metals to us mortals. Fairy tales often talk of them. What would you do for more gold, or any of the precious metals? Would you kill for them?
A rich farmer was one day standing in his yard, inspecting his fields and gardens. The corn was growing up vigorously, and the fruit trees were heavily laden with fruit. The grain of the year before still lay in such immense heaps on the floors that the rafters could hardly bear it. Then he went to the stable, where were well-fed oxen, fat cows, and horses bright as looking glass. At length he went back into his sitting room and cast a glance at the iron chest in which his money lay. While he was thus standing surveying his riches all out at once, there was a loud knock close by him. The knock was not at the door of his room, but at the door of his heart. It opened, and he heard a voice which said to him,
"Hast thou done good to thy family with it? Hast thou considered the necessities of the poor? Hast thou shared thy bread with the hungry? Hast thou been contented with what thou hast, or didst thou always desire to have more?"
The heart was not slow in answering. "I have been hard and pitiless, and have never shown any kindness to my own family. If a beggar came, I turned away my eyes from him. I have not troubled myself about God, but have thought only of increasing my wealth. If everything which the sky covers had been mine own, I should still not have had enough." When he was aware of this answer, he was greatly alarmed. His knees began to tremble, and he was forced to sit down. Then there was another knock, but the knock was at the door of his room. It was his neighbor, a poor man who had had a number of children whom he could no longer satisfy with food. "I know," thought the poor man, "that my neighbor is rich, but he is as hard as he is rich. I don't believe he will help me, but my children are crying for bread, so I will venture it." He said to the rich man, "Thou dost not readily give away anything that is thine, but I stand here like one who feels the water rising above his head. My children are starving. Lend me 4 measures of corn." The rich man looked at him long, and then the first sunbeam of mercy began to melt away a drop of the ice of greediness. "I will not lend thee 4 measures," he answered, "but I will make thee a present of 8, but thou must fulfill 1 condition." "What am I to do?" said the poor man. "When I am dead, thou shalt watch for 3 nights by my grave." The peasant was disturbed in his mind at this request, but in the need in which he was, he would have consented to anything. He accepted, therefore, and carried the corn home with him. It seemed as if the rich man had foreseen what was about to happen, for when 3 days were gone by, he suddenly dropped down dead. No one knew exactly how it came to pass, but no one grieved for him. When he was buried, the poor man remembered his promise. He would willingly have been released from it, but he thought, after all, he acted kindly by me. I have fed my hungry children with his corn, and even if that were not the case, where I have once given my promise, I must keep it. At nightfall, he went to the churchyard and seated himself on the grave mound. Everything was quiet. Only the moon appeared above the grave, and frequently an owl flew past and uttered her melancholy cry. When the sun rose, the poor man betook himself in safety to his home, and in the same manner the second night passed quietly by. On the evening of the 3rd day, he felt a strange uneasiness. It seemed to him that something was about to happen. When he went out, he saw by the churchyard wall a man whom he had never seen before. He was no longer young, had scars on his face, and his eyes looked sharply and eagerly around. He was entirely covered with an old cloak, and nothing was visible but his great riding boots. "What art thou looking for here?" the peasant asked. "Art thou not afraid of the lonely churchyard?" "I am looking for nothing," he answered, "and I am afraid of nothing. I am like the youngster who went forth to learn how to shiver, and had his labor for his pains, but got the king's daughter to wife and great wealth with her. Only I have remained poor. I am nothing but a paid-off soldier, and I mean to pass the night here, because I have no other shelter." "If thou art without fear," said the peasant, "stay with me and help me to watch that grave there." "To keep watch is a soldier's business," he replied. "Whatever we fall in with here, whether it be good or bad, we will share it between us." The peasant agreed to this, and they seated themselves on the grave together. All was quiet until midnight, when suddenly a shrill rustling was heard in the air, and the 2 watchers perceived the evil one standing bodily before them.
"Be off, you ragamuffins,"
cried he to them.
"The man who lies in that grave belongs to me. I want to take him, and if you don't go away, I will wring your necks."
"Sir with the red feather," said the soldier, "you are not my captain. I have no need to obey you, and I have not yet learned how to fear. Go away. We shall stay sitting here." The devil thought to himself,
"Money is the best thing with which to get hold of these 2 vagabonds."
So he began to play a softer tune, and asked quite kindly if they would not accept a bag of money and go home with it. "That is worth listening to," answered the soldier, "but 1 bag of gold won't serve us. If you give us as much as will go into one of my boots, we will quit the field for you and go away."
"I have not so much as that about me,"
said the devil.
"but I will fetch it. In the neighboring town lives a money changer who is a good friend of mine, and will readily advance it to me."
When the devil had vanished, the soldier took his left boot off and said, "We will soon pull the charcoal burner's nose for him. Just give me your knife, comrade." He cut the sole off the boot and put it in the high grass near the grave on the edge of a hole that was half overgrown. "That will do," said he. "Now the chimney sweep may come." They both sat down and waited, and it was not long before the devil returned with a small bag of gold in his hand. "Just pour it in," said the soldier, raising up the boot a little. "But that won't be enough." The black one shook out all those in the bag. The gold fell through, and the boot remained empty. "Stupid devil," cried the soldier. "It won't do. Didn't I say so at once? Go back again and bring more." The devil shook his head, went, and in an hour's time came up with a much larger bag under his arm. "Now pour it in," cried the soldier, "but I doubt the boot will be full." The gold clinked as it fell, but the boot remained empty. The devil looked in himself with his burning eyes and convinced himself of the truth.
"You have shamefully big calves to your legs,"
cried he, and made a wry face. "Did you think," replied the soldier, "that I had had a cloven foot like you? Since when have you been so stingy? See that you get more gold together, or our bargain will come to nothing." The wicked one went off again. This time he stayed away longer, and when at length he appeared, he was panting under the weight of a sack which lay on his shoulders. He emptied it into the boot, which was just as far from being filled as before. He became furious, and was just going to tear the boot out of the soldier's hands, but at that moment the first ray of the rising sun broke forth from the sky, and the evil one fled away with loud shrieks. The poor soul was saved. The peasant wished to divide the gold, but the soldier said, "Give of alms to my lot to the poor. I will come with thee to thy cottage, and together we will live in rest and peace on what remains as long as God is pleased to permit."
Outsmarting the devil, an interesting notion. Fairy tales and legends often serve as warnings. They give us clues on how to trick and defeat the fair people or other supernatural beings. But why would you want to defeat a fairy? Fairies are good, right?
I carved a fairy door for my daughter. My wife is screaming and sobbing. She is cradling filthy, shit-stained baby blankets in her arms. Nothing makes any sense. This started 3 months earlier. My 4-year-old, Amy, loves fairies. My wife and I have always tried really hard to avoid any gender stereotyping with her. She loves watching Power Rangers with me on TV. We have plastic toy dragons and dinosaurs that we play with together. Still, she loves fairies. We live in Yorkshire with its perennially cold and rainy climate, but we are outdoor types and spend as much time as we can in our garden or exploring the boggy, stream-filled forests around our village. We have a few logs that we use as seating around our pond, and when my wife became pregnant with our second, I thought it would be nice to carve a fairy door into one of the logs. Something special, just for Amy, so she didn't feel too left out when the new baby came along, and dominated proceedings as only newborns can. It took me a few months. Work doesn't allow me much spare time, less again when I'm also getting the house ready for the latest arrival, but at last, about 6 weeks ago, it was complete. Carved and painted. I was very proud of myself, even though it's fairly amateurish. Amy was thrilled. She would play endless fairy games out in the garden while my wife and I prepped the house. One day, about 2 weeks before the due date, she said to me,
Daddy, a fairy came in through the door today.
"That's nice, hun," I said, looking up from my phone, partway through a text message.
He says he wants to talk to you, Daddy.
Daddy's a bit busy to talk to fairies just now, sweetheart. I'll play fairies with you on the weekend. I promise.
Okay.
She sulked. I didn't. And within days, our daughter was born. We called her Josephine, and Amy loved her little sister with all her heart. Exhausted but happy, our little family was complete. 2 weeks after Josephine was born, Amy spoke to me again at bath time.
Tommy Shoggles still wants to talk to you, Daddy.
I looked up from my phone. Who on earth is Tommy Shoggles?
The fairy who came through the fairy door.
That's a funny name for a fairy. I thought fairies were called things like Tinkerbell and Sparkleshine.
Don't be silly, Daddy. I like him. He said he wants to talk to you before it's too late. He said we have the balance all wrong.
I was already back on my phone, completing my Amazon order. Tell Bubby what's-his-name Daddy will talk to him on the weekend when he has a bit more time. I had so much to do and didn't have time for fairy games. The next morning, when I went into the bathroom, there was a terrible smell. I just missed standing in a turd, taking pride of place on the floor. I went to see Amy.
It wasn't me. It was Tommy Shoggles.
She was in floods of tears. It's okay, honey. Everybody has little accidents. You'll never get into any trouble for having an accident, I reassured her, cleaning up the stinking mess.
It wasn't an accident. It was Tommy Shoggles. He said he did it to make you listen. He said our kind have stopped listening.
I turned to face her. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know Daddy is very busy with work and Mummy is busy with your little sister, but we both love you more than the whole world. Why don't we play fairies now before I go to work? We did, and she was happy. The next morning, I could smell the same stench as the day before, but much stronger. I was cross. An accident was one thing, but I didn't want Amy getting into bad habits and blaming imaginary friends. I was not ready for the scene when I opened the bathroom door. Excrement was smeared all over the walls. Gagging from the stench, I didn't see the writing scrawled in human shit on the walls at first.
Humankind has broken the pact. There must never be more life-takers than a life-giver.
I ran to check on Amy. I had to protect her from whoever had broken into our house to do this. She was playing calmly in her room. Sweeping her into my arms, I held her tight. Are you okay, sweetheart? I frantically checked her for bruises or cuts.
Tommy Shoggles said you would be cross. I asked you to speak to him, Daddy, and now he's mad. He said mean things.
My heart was racing. I was angry and scared. Has Tommy hurt you? I dreaded the answer.
No, Daddy. He's my friend, and he wouldn't hurt me.
Tell me about him, Amy. Tell me what he looks like. I didn't know what I was hoping. That Tommy Shoggles was some friend from school, that this was all some nightmarish attention-seeking from our little girl, upset that there was a new baby occupying her mummy and daddy.
He's a grown-up, but he's only little.
Her hand gestured to a little under her waist.
He has braces that hold up his trousers, and his teeth are big and wonky. He looks like a giant from a book, but small and quite hairy.
How does Daddy speak to him, honey? Can I come with you to the fairy door now, and can I meet him?
No, Daddy. He said that you have to leave an envelope with his name on next to the fairy door. You have to knock 3 times and say his name each time and leave the envelope and go back into the house until morning.
I stood in the rain, envelope in hand, and knocked. I would have felt ridiculous if I wasn't so angry and afraid. Tommy Shoggles, Tommy Shoggles, Tommy Shoggles. I bought some security cameras on my way home from work. That night, after I set them up to record inside and outside the house, my wife and I made plans to take Amy to see a child psychologist. I barely slept, and in the morning went straight out to the damned fairy door. The envelope was dry, despite the constant rain that had fallen all night. I pulled out the letter inside. It was written in a tiny, meticulous script on some sort of parchment, or maybe even skin. It read,
"You humans make 2 things from your foul debauchery. Your gluttony produces your dirt, and your lust makes your squalling babies. Your dirt is precious. When you spread it on the ground, it makes all things grow. It is the life giver. Your young are the life takers. They grow and breed, killing and consuming, their appetites voracious and infinite. Plant, beast, stone, nothing is sacred or safe from them. Centuries ago, the 2 courts came together and made a pact with man. We made you understand, and you agreed to the great balance. You promised you would give more life to the planet than you would take away. You agreed a tithe of young that we took as changelings to seal the agreement. You have broken the pact. Your science makes you live longer. Appetites ravage unchecked. You tear up the sacred places and foul them with your monstrous structures and evil plastics and metals. Where once you shared your dirt with the earth, now you process it. Add vile poisons and chemicals and make it spread death, not life. No more. Both courts are again united. From this day forth, we will suffer no more of your young. We will take them all, leaving your dirt in their stead until you understand your place again. We made your kind to feed the earth. Do not force us to unmake you."
My wife's screams broke me from my disbelieving trance. I ran back into the house, upstairs to her screams. The gagging stench of human filth hit me before I heard her weeping. "My baby! Where's my baby?" She is screaming, cradling filthy, shit-stained baby blankets in her arms. Josephine is gone. Nothing makes any sense.
I want to give a special thank you to Madam Raven, Happy Shadows, Azazel Codex, and Spirit Voices for collaborating with me. I also want to thank all of my subscribers for listening to my narrations. Thank you for over 500 subscribers.